Welcome to the Garden Talk podcast, where we interview growers from all over the world, both beginners and experts, seeking to learn more about what they know about gardening and how they do things in their garden. Hey everybody, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Chris, aka Mr. Grow It, and you're tuned into the Garden Talk podcast. This is episode number 145. In this episode, I interview Cbunny. Some of you might recognize her from Home Grow the Community, a home grow show on YouTube. She has been gardening for 2 years and grows both indoors and outdoors. When growing outdoors, she takes an organic approach, which is what we're going to get into in today's episode. She talks all about her style of organic gardening outdoors and how she keeps it simple. If you want to see short clips of these podcast episodes, search Garden Talk Clips on YouTube. I also have a gardening channel where I show the plants that I grow. Both of those channels will be linked down in the YouTube description section below. One of my goals for this podcast is to bring free information about gardening to the general public. That being said, I'd like to thank the sponsors of today's episode who helped make that goal possible. Thanks to AC Infinity for sponsoring this episode. Check out their Controller 69, which can help automate your environment's conditions. It'll automatically turn on and off equipment to help control the temperature, humidity, VPD, light schedule, and even the oscillating fans. Click the link in the description section below so you can learn more about the Controller 69, and the discount code MrGrowIt15 works on both Amazon and their website, acinfinity.com. Stash Blend. Stash Blend consists of several ingredients in one, so you no longer have to buy individual bottles. It includes corn steep liquor, seaweed extract, humic acid, beneficial bacteria, silica, and mycorrhizal fungi. It can be used in addition to your synthetic base nutrients or be used in living soil systems. Simply mix it into water and water your plants with it. You can get it at stashblend.com, link in the description section below, and use the discount code THESTASH. And we are back, and I'm joined with Cbunny. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking.
Thanks for coming on to the podcast today. I'm familiar with your show, your channel. You got you, Mama Kush, Mr. Organics, doing your thing on, is it Friday nights and Wednesday nights, or what is that?
Yes, so every Friday and Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, we are over on YouTube.
Great show. Home Grow the Community. I'll definitely have a link in the description section below. And I appreciate what you guys are doing over there.
Thank you.
In this episode, we're going to get into organic gardening outdoor. So lots and lots of people have been requesting outdoor content. We do a lot of content gardening indoors. But first, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into gardening?
So I go by Cbunny Grow. I'm a single mom of 2 sons with special needs. I'm French Canadian. Up until, I'm a late bloomer, so up until 7 years ago, I had never even seen this wonderful plant that we all come to know and love. So I started by helping defoliate it, started watering them, and about 2 years ago, I decided I wanted to do it solo. I grew a great passion for it, and I just couldn't wait to learn more about it and learn quicker than I was being shown.
Awesome. So you're mostly outdoors. I looked at your Instagram. I believe you do a little bit of indoors as well, but see a lot of big plants outdoors. I got to ask, do you start your seeds indoors and veg them for a little while and then transfer to outdoors, or are you planting directly outdoors?
So for indoor, what I'll do is I'll start in a solo cup. I'll use Pro Mix, and I will start it in the tent till they have about their first set of leaves. Then I'll transfer them to the secondary location where the outdoors go.
So that hardening off process, right? I assume you're not just taking them from the indoors and then putting them into outdoors, direct sunlight, and just leaving them like that, right? There's a hardening off period so they don't die.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about that period? Like, how do you do that transition?
So when they do go to the second location, they are put in the garage, and I do put them on the windowsill. So they do get a little bit used to hardening off. And then once they're a little bit bigger, I do bring them outside. So I'll put them in the shade for most of the day, and then I'll put them in the sun for a couple hours, let them get used to the weather and the change of lights, because you go from an LED to the sun, which is a big difference.
So you're starting off like day one, they're doing maybe 2 hours direct sunlight, and then you're kind of gradually ramping up day by day. When are they getting like full sun?
Once I transplant plant them from the solo cup into the bigger cup, so they're decent size when I transfer them into their forever home, then they get full sun all day long.
And then full sun, are we talking 10 hours? Are we talking 12 hours?
So depending the month, usually we'll say from 6 a.m. till about 9:30 p.m.
Oh, okay. And then the entire time they have sun on them, or is there some like shade?
No direct sunlight.
Okay. Now, are you in containers or are you planting them in ground?
I actually use plastic containers, plastic pots. They could be anywhere from 25 gallons to 10 gallons, depending how many I'm doing. If I ran out of the 25 gallons, then I'll do the 10 gallons. Usually I'll put the clones in the 10 gallon and I'll put the seedlings in the bigger pots.
And then what do you have? What's in your soil mix there? Are you in a cocoa? Are you in a soil? What fertilizer are you using? So on and so forth.
So for outdoors, this year I'm using old marsh soil from a swamp down the road from the secondary location. It's mixed with old horse and cow manure and about, I'll say, 15% of perlite for better drainage.
Got it. And then, so that's what you're starting with. Are you doing any sort of like top dressing of amendments or anything like that throughout the grow at all? Or is it just kind of water only for the whole grow cycle?
Having the marsh soil, it already has a lot of life in it. You already have fish poop, you got everything else. And then with the manure, it is very rich in nitrogen. So you have your nitrogens. But I will also sometimes use slow release pellets. I'm not sure the brand. And in flour, I'll add potassium nitrate.
When do you usually add the potassium nitrate?
When they start flowering.
Oh, okay, so the start of flowering. I know some people will wait until like mid or late flowering. You're doing it from the start of flowering and then throughout the whole flowering stage?
Depending, again, what the plant is telling me.
So you're just reading the plant, looking for deficiencies, and then kind of feeding according to that.
Exactly.
And then what are you using for a water source? Are you using like a local tap water, well water? Are you filtering your water?
So I actually use two different kinds of water. I use well water and I use collected rainwater that we collected in a rain barrel. So most of the time, if I use the hose, then it's well water, and then if I use the rainwater, I'll do it by hand.
Got it. Now, have you ever done a water test on your well water to kind of see what the balance of nutrients are in there, or are you just kind of assuming that everything's good and hoping that the microbes kind of work things out?
Just assuming. So far, it's been working over the years.
Cool. I figured I'd ask that because I know some well waters are high in what is it? I think it's
It could be
iron,
very
I believe.
hard.
So some people get into hot water because they're adding this well water, and then they're seeing problems with it, and then they're come to find out that it's just an excess of some elements in their well water that's causing a lockout of other elements. So figured I ask that just to see if you had done testing or not. How about compost teas? Do you do those at all?
No, I'm not outdoors. I do not. Again, they have a lot of stuff already in them from the soil. So
Already got that microbe life, indigenous microorganisms from the soil that you took from that area in the local. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
it's local, exactly. Yeah.
So let's get into plant training next. What do you typically do for plant training when growing outdoors?
So considering where my second location is, there is no neighbors. I am not worried of smell. I'm not worried about the plants being seen. So all I do is absolutely nothing. I let them grow wild and free and how nature intended them to.
So no bending, no topping, no super cropping, no filming, no
No,
nothing, huh? Just
no,
letting them
just
grow
go
naturally.
wild and free.
Now, when I looked at your Instagram, one thing I noticed is that I believe you do have one stake in the middle there, and then there's a cup at the top of the stake. What's that all about?
That's just to know which kind it is.
Okay, so it's a label basically for you.
Yes, yes. The blue cups are clones of one kind. The red cups are clones of the other, and then the bigger pots, the seedling, have actual like popsicle sticks inside that you can't see.
Okay. Now, do you ever get, without doing the training, I'm just curious, do you ever get plants that are so big that we're just kind of flopping all over the place towards the end of flowering there? It's kind of hard to manage, or no?
Yes, but that's where the bamboo sticks really come in handy, tying them up to keep them straight, because otherwise, like you said, they will start to flop.
So in flowering, you are going in and adding in support stakes.
Yeah,
What is it, like mid or late flowering or something like that? Just as needed, or what?
it just as needed. Yes, some plants may not need it. Some plants may.
Got it. That makes sense. And so, how big do your outdoor plants typically get?
So typically, they'll get anywhere from 7 to 10 feet tall on a good harvest. Typically.
Okay, lots of time trimming, I assume, right?
Oh my goodness, that's a whole different show.
And I would not want to be in that trim jail, that's for
No,
sure.
no.
That's where something I feel like the bowl trimmer would be super helpful if you got the money. Even one of those larger trimmers, more commercialized, but they make like more commercialized ones for home growers as well.
Yeah,
I know they can get pretty pricey there, but geez, if you're dealing with 10-foot plants and you've got multiple of them, it
I get my
might be worth
dad's
the
help.
investment. Now, I want to get into something that's going to potentially hurt yields, which is pests. What does your IPM routine consist of? Like, what are you doing in order to prevent pests from invading your grow space?
I've been very lucky, knock on wood, and I might regret saying this, but I do not do any IPM management. Mother Nature has been good to me so far. And with the ladybugs we have out there, and with all the amazing life in the marsh soil, both good and bad, it's helped keep it pretty steady. So no major pests so far. We've had a couple caterpillars, but you just flick them off and it's been good. Indoors, however, I've ran into a lot of gnats.
Yeah, that's great to hear about outdoors. Usually, usually hear about some infestations happening, but there are a lot of beneficials out there that's really going to help combat those pests.
Exactly.
So now caterpillars, have you been doing any sort of spraying? I know you said you're flicking them off, but I know some people really struggle with caterpillars. It's all over the plant. Is it you just find one here and there, or is it like, does it get really bad sometimes?
Again, knock on wood, I've been pretty lucky. Where I do have the plants, I do keep them away from other trees and other plant life that is in the area, so they don't have like caterpillars falling on it and stuff like that. So I'm assuming that's why I haven't had many, or it could just be luck.
How about beneficial insects? Do you have any of those like kind of flying around or that you can spot that you're aware of that you know are doing a good thing in your garden?
Not that I could really think off at the top of my head, like just the normal, like of course the ladybugs. They're our favorite one. But besides that, I can't just think right now.
Okay. How about cover crops and mulch layer? And you mentioned you're growing organically. You mentioned the inputs and what you're using for a soil. Now, some people are going to do cover crops as well, which could be very beneficial for a wide variety of reasons, or mulch layers. Are you utilizing either one of those in your containers?
I am not, but it is something that I want to start doing. I haven't yet. Again, with the soil I'm using, it already has a lot of those microbes, a lot of bacterias, a lot of everything I need, which is great. But I know cover crops would be good for pest controls as well, for keeping certain pests away. Certain smells will keep certain bugs. And so that is definitely something I'm interested in my next grows, but not this one, not yet.
All right. Well, I'll definitely be staying tuned to your Instagram to see once you start using those things, how you use them, because yeah, it's definitely beneficial. I'd like to see what the difference would be between using them and not using them. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Any advice for the flowering stage? I feel like this is somewhere a lot of folks, they just struggle. They have a really healthy veg. They veg their plants for however long, then flip to flower, or in outdoors, it's just automatically transitioning to flower as there's less light naturally, right? But in the flowering stage, people come across problems potentially with deficiencies or whatever. What advice do you have for getting through the flowering stage?
To be honest, the best advice I can give is to just not give up. Reach out to the community. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Be patient, because that is my biggest challenge in flowering is being patient. But yeah, definitely. If you don't succeed, just don't give up. Keep moving forward. Again, ask for help. There is no shame in asking for help. We all started at the bottom, and that's how we will learn what kind of deficiency we have, what kind of nutrients you may need to add, and so on and so forth.
Good tips. I want to go back to the harvest process because you mentioned these 7 to 10 foot plants, and it's a lot. Can you walk us through your process of harvesting? Like, when do you harvest? What are you looking at to determine when or not to harvest? And then walk us through your process in detail, like cutting down the plant and what you do from there.
So ideally, I would like to cut down. I like to cut down Thanksgiving, Canadian Thanksgiving, which is in October. I do like to check my trichomes. I'm looking for something that's no clear. I don't want any clear on my trichomes. But due to our weather, which is very up and down, it's very hard to get that far. So we do get a lot of rain, a lot of frost because I am up north. So we tend to get a lot of bud rot, which causes us to cut down very, very early.
Do you typically just cut off that branch that's infected, or are you like getting rid of the whole plant?
Well, if it's not bad, we'll cut off the plant that's just the branch that's infected. But once we notice that it starts to spread, I will cut the whole plant and then cut out the pieces that have bud rot and just hang it and go from there. So once I do cut them, I will hang them. Usually the whole plant will be hung in a garage in the top loft on strings.
So in the garage on strings, hanging upside down. And then for drying, what does your setup look like? Are you just in that area? And then also, are you setting up like humidifiers or dehumidifiers, fans? Like, what's your dry setup?
For drying, I do look for 60/60. It is much cooler in October, especially up north again. So I do not need to have any extra humidifiers or air conditioners or fan, knock on wood. I've been pretty lucky for between the 55-60 is what I've been getting. But ideally, I aim for 60/60.
It must be nice to have that natural humidity
Yeah.
there. I live in a dry climate. I have to say that in almost every episode here because people need to be reminded every episode. But it's 20 to 30%. I mean, I had wintertime, it was 16% relative humidity. And so I'm always trying to crank in humidity.
It is not fun.
Yeah, and in drying, it's so easy to over dry. And I can
Yeah.
only imagine being in a place like you where it's naturally around that 55, 60%
Yes.
relative humidity, which is ideal for the drying process. So I'm a little bit jealous.
I will notice that, like, if it does rain a lot, the humidity, it is very humid. So I will put a dehumidifier, but it's very rare, thankfully.
Better safe to deploy that out and try to start removing that humidity rather than come across that bud rot, right? Because that mold can even happen in the drying stage. And
Yes.
that happened to me, unfortunately. I went through a grow. My fan died within the last couple weeks. And I noticed it after 24 hours. So the fan died. I looked at it. I'm like, oh, what the heck? The fan died. So I added in the fan, let the plants continue to grow for the last 2 weeks,
Yes.
harvested. And then it's during drying when I noticed that I actually had an issue. There was white, fuzzy mold on the inside of the buds. I'm like, oh no, what
Yeah.
happened? I had to think, was it my drying conditions? No, it actually wasn't. I had to think back and be, oh, I had a fan die for 24 hours. And sure, the fan died and it was only down for 24 hours, but that's enough time for that to establish and start the botrytis to start to grow, right? And so, like, even though I added in fans, that doesn't eliminate the problem, right? The mold has already started, and it would slowly grew from there. So, bud rot is definitely not a fun thing to come across. That's for sure.
Oh no, especially when it's big plants. It's sad
Yep.
when you have to cut them down too early and they're still good, but they don't get to the full potential they can be.
I can only imagine. I can only imagine. So after you're done drying the plant, so it's brought down to that kind of shelf stable percent, what are you doing for curing? Are you putting into jars? Are you using bags? Walk us through your curing process.
So for curing, I do both. I do the jars and I do the Grove bags. The reason I do that is because, again, having so many, so much to harvest, I only have so many bags. So I go to the jars. I do the rest in the jars. And I do like to see the side by side difference. I didn't notice much. The only thing for myself personally with jars is I tend to forget to burp or I forget to tend to put the jar lid back on. So with the curing bag, I don't have to worry about it. I'll open it once in a blue moon, move the buds around to make sure that everything's good, and then I just leave it.
Yeah, so those Grove bags, you don't even need to burp at all technically, right? It's
No.
kind of like a self-burping thing. You just as long as the buds are dry, once you're putting it in there and sealing it up. Now you also like heat sealing it as well?
No, it is recommended to heat still, but I do not.
But even when you're sealing it, it's burping itself, so you don't have to
Yes.
actually open up a jar every day. So that makes things a little bit easier.
I like to move it around just to make sure there's no more moisture. Just to make sure, because sometimes you think it's dry and it's not 100%, and you get that moisture in the bags, and so I like to check on it.
Definitely sounds like a good thing to do. Now, are you using the large grow bags that hold like a pound at a time or whatever? I can imagine using the larger ones since you're having such a big yield out there, right?
Yes, so I do have a lot of larger bags. I do have some medium bags, but yeah, I tend to stick definitely with the larger bags.
How long until you actually consume?
Ideally, I want it to be a month or two for curing, but that all depends on how well I did on my previous harvest, if I need to get into it earlier or not.
Okay. And then did you mention, I'm trying to remember if you mentioned what you usually get for yield when growing outdoors?
Ideally, what I'm looking for and what I normally get is anywhere between a pound per plant, a pound and a half per plant. It all, of course, that all depends on the pheno as well.
Is there any particular strains that you recommend?
Being so new to growing, I haven't tried many strains yet, so I can't really recommend. I do like to grow outlaw seeds. That has been one of my favorite breeders. I do like the forbidden fruits, the Mary Berry. I really like that gassy, fruity terp is what I like to grow.
Yeah, I like the gassy, fruity, citrusy. I like that more than like the dessert,
Yeah,
super sweet. But yeah, everyone has their own preferences. They're real skunky, gassy, fuely. Like I
yeah.
love that. That's all me for sure. So misconceptions. I want to ask you this question here. There's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to growing outdoors. Can you give us maybe a short list of things that people think are the case when growing outdoors, but it's actually not the case?
So growing outdoors, again, people think it's very easy, but it again, it's not the case. Weather has a big factor to do with it. So always have a backup plan for bad weather. So if you know it's going to rain, have tarps ready. If you know it's going to be windy, get ready to tie them down, because that kind of stuff can definitely ruin a good plant.
All right. And then do you have any advice for beginners that are just getting started growing outdoors?
So I definitely never give up. Like I said previously, is one of my big things. Learn from your mistakes. Again, don't be afraid to ask for help. And when you do ask for help, you always got to keep in mind that everyone's environment is different. So their advice might work great for them, but it might not work great for you. And that's okay. Just keep looking until you find what works great for you and till you dial in your craft. But yeah, definitely never give up and be patient. That's my biggest. Don't cut too early.
Yeah, it can be kind of difficult when you're so excited. You're like, oh, is it ready to harvest? Ready to go? And then cutting too early, that's a common mistake.
Yes, that is my biggest fault.
So you have a pretty simple, straightforward approach to growing outdoors now. I know you mentioned that you've been growing outdoors for a couple years now. So arguably you're in the kind of newer stages of growing outdoors, but you keep it very simple, right? Using the soil that is at your local marsh from down the street or wherever, using inputs, manure based inputs locally, right? You're growing outdoors. You don't have to worry about lights on or off, or any controlling the environment conditions, because that's all done naturally outdoors. You haven't come across many pests.
Knock
We've
on
been
wood.
fortunate enough for that, right? So not using any cover crops or mulch layers, just keeping it simple all around, and you're getting all the way to harvest. I think this is a good example of a way that you can keep it simple and get to harvest. A lot of folks will do the process and they'll overthink things or they'll complicate things, and they're getting the same result that you're getting, and they're doing a lot more work. So
Yes, I think that comes with being, again, a new grower. Is I haven't gotten to overcomplicate things yet, and I'm trying very hard not to. I'm trying to stick to, if it's working, stick to that. What works works.
what you don't know, you don't know, and
Exactly.
you're just doing things, trying it out, and having fun with it.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, that was a quick episode. They're straight to the point. I appreciate your time coming onto the podcast today. Can you tell listeners how they can find you and what you have upcoming in the future?
I could be found over on Instagram under Cbunny Grow. I could also be found over on YouTube under Homegrow the Community Official, where that we do interviews every Wednesdays, and every Fridays it's come and show your grows. You could also find me on Spotify under HGTC podcast. Recently we had Jorge Cervantes on, so that was a great episode. I got to meet him in person as well, so that was pretty awesome. I'm excited for the future because we will have Mila the Hash Queen coming on sometime in September. So that will be, it's a very exciting time, and I definitely recommend to tune in and not miss out.
Well, I'll definitely have a link to Cbunny's YouTube channel down in the description section below, so you can easily get there and give her a subscription. Shout out to all the folks that are supporting on Patreon. Long list of you. I'll put it on the screen right now. The folks that are in the producer credit tier, there's a couple different tiers that you can join, but 100% of what is donated through Patreon goes right back into the podcast. So everything that you need to pay for in order to run this podcast gets paid through the Patreon members. So thank you so much for your support there. Patreon.com/Mr. Grow It if anybody does want to support. Appreciate you coming on and spilling your process with us, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much for having me on. I greatly appreciate it. And thank you to everyone for tuning in.
All right. Peace out, everyone. Catch you in the next episode.